Hi, this is Steve Rigolosi, and today's forgotten mystery is Starlight, Star Bright by Stanley Ellin. And this is copyright 1979 by Random House. So if you have never heard of or read Stanley Ellin, I'm pleased to help you make his acquaintance. He was a very respected writer of mysteries and thrillers, not only in terms of novels, but also in terms of short stories. I have to admit, I've never read one of his short stories, but by all accounts, they're excellent. So if there are any that you have read and can recommend, please do so in a comment below. So let me tell you a little bit about my personal experience with Stanley Ellin. The first time I ever read him, I was on my back recovering from an appendectomy in 1986, so many moons ago. And the book I read at that time was Very Old Money. And that book made me a fan of Stanley Ellin. That is a terrific book. It's how many years later? And I can still remember the characters' names and the plot. So it really made an impression on me. Very much what you want a mystery to do in terms of characters and twists and surprises. Just really excellent. And he also wrote another book, a psychosexual thriller called Mirror, Mirror on the Wall. That one is fucked up, very psychologically disturbing and weird and unsettling, disconcerting. I loved it, which tells you something about me. I recommend it highly if you can handle that kind of thing. If you can't handle that kind of psychological disturbance, then I would say don't even go near it. So let me tell you a little bit about Starlight, Star Bright. This is a very traditionally structured mystery. Our narrator, our first-person narrator, is Johnny Milano, who is a private investigator in New York City. He works in a two-man office with another guy who's kind of a crank and a secretary. And he's called down to Florida, where a death threat has been made. And the link there is that a few years previously, Johnny had been on had a wild, raging, passionate relationship with this movie star, Sharon Bauer, who dumps him after a couple of weeks of bliss and ends up marrying a billionaire. And they have, an enormous mansion down in Florida, and they've gathered a bunch of people there because Sharon's husband, Andrew Quist, is thinking about funding a Hollywood film. And so there's a bunch of film types wandering around down there. Actors, producers, directors, writers, the whole movie shtick. And the person whose life is threatened is Sharon's former astrological guru. She had never made a decision without consulting him first, and now it appears he's gone legit and really sees himself as a prophet, in a way, one whose sacrifice will service humanity. Excuse me. And part of what drives the plot, part of the fun, is that you don't really know if he truly has gone legit and believes this, or if this is just another money-making bullshit scheme of his. So Johnny goes down to Florida, investigates, finds out what's going on, and there is your book in a nutshell. Overall, I would say I like this book, and I thought it was good. I just don't think I liked it as much as I like other Stanley Ellin books. So let me tell you a little bit about the pros and the cons. In terms of the pros, Ellin was a great writer. Here, medium boiled, but he does something that I love, which is that he is not verbose. He is not wordy. There's no section in the middle of the book that drags because nothing is happening or because the page count is padded out. It's tight. I also like that Johnny Milano is smart and uses his brain and uses his wits. He listens and he observes and he makes connections that we as readers, most of us not being private investigators, don't automatically see how he got to his conclusion. But when he explains it, you think, wow, that's really brilliant. If I had just thought one or two more steps the way he did, I would have come to this very valid conclusion as well. And so I really like spending time with a detective who doesn't rely on hunch or doesn't rely on eavesdropping or other sort of cheaty type plot devices, but who is a true investigator, and Johnny Milano is that. I guess for me, they're not so much cons as they are parts of the book that I didn't like as much. The first is that his former, I can't even call her girlfriend, lover, because they were just together for a couple of weeks, Sharon Bauer, who is the starlet, she's just a bit much, or maybe she's just not enough, in that she is this sort of wide-eyed ingenue who never quite knows what's going on around her and believes, takes at face value everything everybody says, has zero critical thinking ability at all. I kind of wonder if she was modeled on Marilyn Monroe, because she's presented as every man's dream, like I said, she's just a little too much. It brings up the interesting question of, was Marilyn Monroe the ditz in real life that she played on the silver screen? And I'm not really enough of a movie buff to know about her, but I have read things that said, she was nobody's fool, but she played one up there on the big screen. But I don't think that's the case with Sharon. I think she really is kind of a numbskull. And it's hard to see what Johnny sees in her other than the very physical. Although, maybe sometimes that's enough. For a couple weeks spent together, in bed, maybe that's enough. The other thing is that this book is very traditionally structured, right? It's that kind of country house mystery where a bunch of shady characters get together, a murder happens or is planned, the PI comes in, talks to everybody, snoops around, brings everybody into a room at the end and reveals who done it and why. And that's pretty much what the structure is here. It's well done. It's handled very, very competently and very capably. It's just that it didn't take me anywhere I wasn't really expecting it to go. So there was nothing to really tickle my fancy or make me perk up and think, oh, wow, this is really something different or something special. It's very much in that traditional golden age Agatha Christie style. And this is by no means a criticism of Agatha Christie, because I love her, as I think we all do. But, that was the type of book that she wrote. I know not exclusively. I know she wrote spy stuff too, but you know what I mean. So I guess after reading several other Stanley Ellin novels that were more creative, more off the beaten path, to see him on doing something that is so kind of standard or traditional, it disappointed me a little. I don't want that to turn you off this book, though. I feel like I'm damning it with faint praise. It's really good, and you will enjoy it, I think, and you'll appreciate Ellin's craft and his artistry. But I think you'll probably think, oh, good book, but not, wow, great book. So I hope this has been a helpful introduction to Stanley Ellin for you. Oh, one more thing I should mention is that Johnny Milano is a New York Italian, but in name only. There's nothing about his portrayal in the book that gives you the feeling that he is part of Italian-American culture in the New York region. And I can say this as a person of Italian heritage who lives in the New York region, right? If you are part of an Italian family, you know what that entails. You know how overwhelming and wacky it can be. And there's none of that in here. Johnny Milano is just Italian for the sake of being Italian, but we really see nothing about his Italian hood other than a reference occasionally to his pain-in-the-ass mother. But I mean, that didn't bother me, but it just would have been nice to see a little bit more of the fun of Italian families here in this book. So that's what I've got for you today. And I will be back the next time I have a good or great book to recommend. Thank you.